So we have a John Deere S140 we're tuning up this morning. I'm going to show you how to do that, get it all serviced, give you a few maintenance and pointers on keeping this thing going throughout the year. First off, it doesn't take a whole lot to get this thing serviced. Basically all you need is a 24 millimeter or a 15/16 to take the blade off. You need an 8 millimeter or a 5/16 to take the side panels off to get access to the drain and to the oil filter under here. You're only going to need a few parts. You got a couple spark plugs. These are 491055Ts. You've got an 07103 fuel filter is what we use. 492932S oil filter. 5428. This is the air cleaner along with the pre-filter assembly. Now you can do the other things that are just the air filter cartridge, which is what it comes with, but we like to put the pre-filters on there too. They seem to filter out quite a bit better, especially if people aren't tuning them up like they should. Now you will need a 5/8 to remove the spark plug, and you will need a big set of vice grip pliers is what we use to take the oil filter off. They just work great for that. Or you'll need some other sort of pliers also to get the fuel filter off, get the clamps off to get it replaced. Now this thing's got the 48-inch deck on it. It's got a 24-horse Briggs. Decent engines on these things. A lot of people say they don't like them, but I mean, they're pretty rock solid as long as you take care of them like you should. Don't have too many issues for the most part, at least for the first few years, 5 to 8 years. Sometimes you get some issues with the valve spacing and stuff like that, but that is common across the board. So for what these are, they're a pretty decent little unit. We're going to take this hood off so I can show you a little clearer shot from the front. And all you do is take that wire, and then to actually remove the hood, if you tip it just slightly, and then you're going to push over to the side and the whole thing comes up and out. Now I think this is a horrible design. If you're traveling down the road for any reason, do not put these sideways on your trailer. You will lose a hood. Yes, I speak from experience on that. I lost one time. Never again, I can tell you that much. But to get I'm going to let that sit right now. I'm going to take that off here shortly. To get to the oil drain, we're going to need just a 8 millimeter or 5/16. And there's just a bolt comes off there, and then this whole side panel just pulls up and off. Now that allows you to the easy drain, the quick drain here. Those are nice on these. And all you've got to do is, I usually take a pair of pliers and just twist and then pull it straight out. Gets our oil draining. Now this thing only has, I think it said 8 hours on it, so it's the first tune-up it's ever had. Everything on here is original. I like to take the dipstick out also when I do it. Now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. We're going to take that panel off. That just seemed like it kind of fell off at that point. This one had a washer on it, and I didn't see a washer on the other one. I'm going to do a little investigating over there. See if that fell off for some reason or what exactly happened. Go ahead and put us up top real quick and get this hood out of the way so we can get a good view of what exactly is going on. And again, just barely close that hood, and you take it as soon as you barely close it, you just, kind of tilt it to the side and it'll come up and kind of out. So to get the air cleaner off, move us a little bit closer here. To get the air cleaner out, just going to go ahead and remove the 2 wing nuts at the top. We'll get all the easy stuff done first, and then we'll sharpen and balance the blades, grease everything up. Now that just, to me, that's not a snug fit. Here at the back side where it fits in, I don't know if it's just this air filter or not, but it's not fitting real nice in the back there. So I always like to wipe it out as I get up in here. If there's a bunch of stuff in here, blow it out real well. You don't want any of that stuff in your air cleaner box getting sucked through for any reason. Go ahead and open our 5428K filter. We'll throw it in there. Now that one seems to sit real well. It seems to, the other one I was just able to turn it with no problem whatsoever. This one's seating a lot better than that original one did in there, so that's good. Let's clean everything up in through here. The more dust you keep out of your air cleaner box and away from that area, the longer your mower is going to last. It's not going to get sucked through. Now we've got our plugs to the sides. Let that oil drain just kind of while we're doing all this. Makes for an easier and quicker tune-up. Not that this one's too bad to begin with, but now I always like to pay attention as I'm doing the plugs. I usually look up top and see if I can't see a bunch of stuff in the cooling fins down below the screen here. If there's a bunch of stuff in there, you'll want to blow that out real well. We usually just take a blower and we'll blow out that along with, I'll show you some of the other points here. Now these originally had Champion, I guess these are XC92YCs. I think they do that just to confuse you. They're replacing an RC12YC is what they normally call for, but these are the Briggs & Stratton branded 491055Ts. I like them better. I don't know, I've never really been a Champion person. You can also use the BCPR5 ES. Now that's an NGK plug. Some people like NGK more than they like the Briggs & Stratton or the Champions. You can ask just about anybody and they've got an opinion one way or the other on what kind of plugs they're going to use. When we go to the other side, get the other plug real quick. Now while we're over here, we'll go ahead and do the fuel filter and the oil filter. Get it nice and level. Doesn't look too bad. Now all in this tune-up, usually about half an hour to 45 minutes. We like to blow everything off after we're done and go ahead and power wash them also, so it takes a little bit more time, but it's not too bad of a process depending on exactly what you're doing. Some of them are dirtier than others. Some of them you've got to spend a half an hour getting all the grass out from around the deck and things like that, but this one, with only having 8 hours on it, it's not going to take nearly as long as most of them. You always want to start your spark plugs by hand before you use any tool to tighten them. Otherwise, you can cross thread them pretty easily. You're going into aluminum. These should be gapped at 0.030 inches. Now, these come pre-gapped, so we're not going to worry about gapping anything. Almost all plugs do anymore. Now, this is a 5/8 or a 16 millimeter. Either way, we'll remove those plugs. Looks like our oil's finishing up on the other side, so that's good. When I do my fuel line, what I like to do is I like to get it out of the holder here. It's kind of crushed in over on this side, but just take your clamp off, pinch, and pull it down. And then I like to grab it and twist. You just twist that fuel filter on both sides. So if you get that twisted, you've kind of unlocked that area. You get your new one ready. Again, that's an Oregon 07-103. If you get that new one ready, when you pull this off, pull it about halfway off of both. Just kind of get it ready, and then from where it's coming from the fuel tank, I grab and just kind of pull, and a little bit will come out, but I can go ahead and put my new one on there. And then for the old one, I just take and kind of barely touch with my hand and pull it out. Now my fuel filter has came off. We're ready to install the new one. We didn't really spill much gas. Got a little bit on there, I guess. Push that all the way in. Go ahead and put our clamps back on. We want it to be all the way up. Don't want to leave it down there at the end, even though there are nipples on there. It's for a different size fuel line with these filters. And you just kind of move it back and forth and it'll go up on there. Perfect. We're going to set our vice grip pliers to large. And if we go, see if I can't get you a little bit better of a view of this process. It's just the easiest way for us. If you've got like a oil filter wrench or something like that, that's great too. But these pliers just help so much in this process. So I just take it, at the furthest to the right stance you can get, nice squeeze. And then I go ahead and move, because these are on here usually from the factory, pretty stinking tight. And then you keep getting a grip from the right. Just squeeze and go. Squeeze and go. And just keep working that around until it's loose enough. Once it gets, it's pretty well loose at this point, you can take it from the front when you don't have to have as much grip on it. Basically any way you want to do it, but again, these things are a bear sometimes, especially straight from the factory. As far as coming off, it doesn't seem like they lube that seal real well. Once it gets broken loose pretty well, or you feel like it's about to come off, I like to use an old junk rag. This one's kind of got grease and stuff all over it, but I usually just put a lip there at the back side, that way it doesn't roll towards the engine, and put it up underneath. And then I like to put a towel just down below. It's the same one I just used for the gas, so just to kind of make as little of a mess as we can as we're doing this. After it's off, tip it up, put that over in the oil filter can, let it drain. Obviously you're going to discard that. You can go ahead and wipe the flange off. Get it nice and clean, get some new oil on the, so you grab some oil, just go all along. You want that seal nice and lubed. All right, still a tiny bit coming out, but pretty well empty. Now we always like to sign with our initials who's doing the oil filter and then date it, just so we know when it was replaced, who replaced it, and that we replaced it. Just kind of one of those things with the repair shop. Now you don't want to overly tighten this, but you do want to make sure it's tight. These do have a tendency to back off pretty good. Tighten it up hand tight, about as tight as you can get it. And you'll leave it there. You can put all these kind of holders and everything back in on that side. Now you can use a larger oil filter on here if you want to. They make the extended oil filter, the 491056. It does have enough room to fit on the inside after this cover piece is back on. So there's plenty of room from there to the outside cover to fit that 491056 if you want the larger capacity oil filter. And it's a possibility, same thread and everything. All right. So now that that's done, we will on the other side. All right. And we'll come over here. Oil's basically done draining at this point. There's a couple small drips left. Gonna put our cap back on, and then we're gonna turn it. And I always like to use pliers for this. It just seems better and easier. Turn it to the left to lock it back in. Now your cap's back on. Got our oil drained down there. I think it's just over 2 quarts, or right about 2 quarts on this. We're gonna start at 2 and go from there. So, put a couple quarts in real quick. Now remember, when you're checking this, it's not going to show you actual true capacity until it runs and you actually fill up the oil filter. The oil filter holds, I think, right about 4 ounces. So if you're looking at the dipstick and it's all the way showing 100% full, you know you're still a little bit low because of the capacity of the oil filter. So that's 2 quarts. Again, I think it takes a little over 2 on these, if I remember correctly. Most of them do. And it's weird because some of them will actually say they take 2 quarts and then they're more. Yeah, so it's about right at the top dot as far as high capacity, but we don't have the oil filter figured into that equation yet. So I'm gonna go ahead and put about another 6 or so ounces in it. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the cap on, and you'll want to test that again after you run it. So what we normally do, we get them up there, finish tuning everything up, and we actually do double checks on them. So after we oh, so there is a washer there too, it just got stuck to the plastic. After we power wash them, get the invoice and everything made, we actually come back and double check the whole thing, make sure everything's perfect, oil level's good, just to make sure. You never want something going out without enough oil in it. Oop, that didn't want to go where it's supposed to. Okay. Can't see where the hole is right this second. Let's see here. Oh, there we are. Apparently there's a little retainer on the back side that's supposed to keep this bolt in place. It did not work out as supposed to on either side. I've never seen one actually be there, so. All right. Nice and easy there. So basically the whole engine is tuned up at this point. We can put the hood and everything back on now. This is all done besides double checking the oil level once we get it a little further down. So I'm going to jack up the bottom here. We'll get it jacked up, get the blade sharpened, and finish this thing up. We use this as kind of a light aluminum jack. They go just high enough that they work perfect for what we need them for. This one here has been acting a little goofy lately. It seems like it takes way more pumps than it should to get up there, but one of those things, as you continue using them, they do degrade over time. If there's any debris or anything like that up around the engine as you're doing this, you know, if you're looking up underneath and you're seeing any debris like on the bottom of the engine or anywhere like that up around here, you're going to want to blow all that stuff out. Anything around the carburetor, you know, just take an air blower and just kind of, you know, blow it out real good. Again, this thing's only got 8 hours on it, so it doesn't have most of these things that we would see in many other units after they got 50 or 100 hours on them. But make sure everything around the muffler especially is clean. If it's not, you can cause a fire. Definitely don't want anything like that. Now I usually jack it up a little bit and then put it on a jack stand on just one side. And then I actually go under the deck completely in order to jack it the rest of the way up. I'm going to move my oil at this point. You don't want to spill a couple quarts of oil all over the floor. That's never a good thing. I've done it plenty of times. When you do a bunch of these, eventually you're going to spill something. That's for sure. But keep from doing it as much as you can. And again, all the way under the deck just seems like the best place for me when I'm doing it. If you've got a way that you prefer to jack it up from, that's great, but just make sure it's secure. Again, normally this is about 3 or 4 pumps. This thing is not working like it should at this point. Alright, almost up there. Workout just pumping up the jack this morning. So we're going to grab all these blades off of here, one at a time. This is a 24 millimeter or 15/16. No, it's not. I went to hit it and noticed that I got the wrong size on here. Grab the right size real quick. Which is what exactly? Let's see what we got. 18, okay. Looks like it may be a 7/8. No, that don't make. I've got my 15/16 here, and it just felt really, really loose. I was almost positive that's what it was. And apparently it is, but Why is it feeling so? See, it just feels like there's a lot of play, but apparently there's not. Apparently I was just being a little bit off when I was seeing that, thinking I was seeing something that I wasn't. So it is the 15/16 as we described. 424. Now, a big impact definitely helps to get these off of here. We usually either use a smaller impact to get it back on, or we're real light with the feathered trigger on this thing. You don't want to over tighten them and have to deal with that next time. Now, if you're not using an impact for this, what you can do is you can wedge something in between the blade and the deck at this point. So if you wedge something in between the blade and the deck, and then you can use a big breaker bar to break it off, that's a good way to do it. I'm gonna go over to the sharpener and get these things sharpened up. Now we use a Bradley blade sharpener. We've been thinking about getting into a belt sharpener, but they're super expensive, and I don't know. They keep trying to sell them to us, and it just, to me, I guess maybe it's worth the extra investment, but just doesn't seem like it sometimes. You know, we sharpen quite a few blades, but is it really worth? You know, I mean, they're extremely expensive for one of those. So far we've decided against it. I'm not sure if in the future we'll get it or not, but it does seem like it's a little bit better and a little bit cooler. You're going to be sharpening a lot of blades, which we do. So sharpen these up real quick. We've got just a vacuum system here that kind of sucks in all the loose aluminum oxide off the grinding wheel. We're just working in and out along that one sharp edge. So I usually like to count them. So we've got these all sharpened up here. And again, you're just doing that first 3 or so inches of the blade before the backspin. This here is not a cutting edge of the blade. That's going to do more for your mulching and stuff like that. Not going to be a big deal to be a little bit dull. That's all it's there for, is to kind of chop up that extra grass as it comes around. The cutting edge is that first flat 3 inches. That's where all of your cutting is coming from. That's all we're going to sharpen on these. You don't want them razor sharp, but you want them to have a nice good edge to them. Now we're going to go ahead and balance them. We've got this is an Oregon blade balancer. All you're going to do, this piece here slides back and forth, but we just put it up there and then the back piece slides towards it. And you're going to make sure it's balanced. That should stay exactly where it's at. I've already checked all these and they balance out good. Now if there's a big buildup of grass or dirt or debris on any of this stuff, you will want to go ahead and scrape that off. Make sure it's scraped on both sides. If it's just a small amount like on these, they gather on both sides evenly, so you're not going to have to worry about that doing anything as far as your balancing goes. I see a lot of people spending a lot of time cleaning up things like that, and honestly, in all reality, it's not going to really do anything whatsoever any different than not cleaning it. So, get these things back on and proceed with the rest of the tune-up. Okay. When I'm putting them back on, I always like to put the first blade facing the middle blade so I can kind of line them up and just visually make sure that they look like they're going to be at the same level. Normally they are, especially on something this new, but if somebody hits something or something like that, that may not be the case. Now again, I'm going to use a different impact. I'm going to use a little bit smaller impact here to put these back on, and I'm not going to crank the heck out of it down. Blades don't need to be super tight to hold them on. You're just going to want to make sure they're nice and snug. If you're doing it by hand, that's a good way to do it, especially if you don't know the impact or the tool you're working with. And as I put this second one on again, just kind of directly towards the other one. I mean, those look dead on as I'm looking towards them. So that's a good thing. That's where you want it. You want it all to be level up under there. Third one, kind of the same thing. You can move it towards you. And just make sure those outside edges are level, that they look good. Now you can also take the blade around and mark you a space on the outside edge of the deck. You can either hold your finger there or you can mark a space, visually see. And when you come back around, you should be at that same spot. So here we're perfect. As far as scraping the deck goes, this is a scraper I've had forever. It's actually just I believe it's just a Sawzall blade. I think years and years ago my dad cut it down or grinded it down so he could undercut commentators in electric motors. It had to be real thin, but I duct taped it up and added a few things. It works great for scraping the outsides of the decks and stuff. So in here you're going to want to make sure everything's scraped out underneath. Now this one again doesn't have hardly anything in it, but this, as far as a scraper, works great. Something nice and light. You can use just a regular paint scraper or anything else like that also, if you so choose. Again, it has hardly nothing in here, but you really want to pay attention to right where the blade comes around. Right along here, a lot of times it'll get a good build up to it, and that's going to actually come and it's going to push in against the blade at some point and keep your blade from spinning or cause it to bog down real well. So make sure you get those scraped off real good. We're going to bring this back down. We're going to go ahead and grease the deck at this point. So we're done with the blades. Now, I like to leave it up just a little bit when I'm doing the greasing, and there's a reason for that I'll show you. So as we come over, see if we can't get a good view top here. That looks pretty good. So you've got a grease zert on both of your spindles of your wheels, and then you've got both of the insides of the wheels, and then you've also got a real nice one right up in here that actually is for your, it basically lubes right here on the axle. Now we use a DeWalt battery powered grease gun. Just makes it so much easier if you're doing it all the time. Don't have to deal with manually pumping. You know, some of these things, if they're real dry, they take, 15, 20 pumps sometimes or more. Now you're just going to pump until you start to hear the grease come back out. You'll hear a, almost like a, you can see it coming out there and over here as I'm doing it, but you'll almost hear like a crack or a pop a lot of times, where the grease is completely full and it kind of starts pushing the air out of there. Right. Now over greasing these, it'll cause some grease to come out. I would much rather have more grease than less in my mower when it's being tuned up, and maybe gather a little bit of dirt or debris on the outside of it than be under greased at any point in time. So I would keep that in mind. Again, we're going to come down on this. We're going to go ahead and do our secondary jack up here. And take it off the jack stand. That just makes it a little bit easier for me anyway, without having to try to get that deck up originally to get the jack up underneath it. Whatever method you use, that's great, as long as it gets it off the ground. Now we need the spindles. So the spindles have bearings in them that are greasable on this unit. Now there's 3 different spindles, 3 different areas to grease. So if you look straight down in here, there's a grease zerk right down there. And then we'll just go ahead and about 30 or so pumps, and we'll wipe this off here in just a second. Just the excess grease on the outside. Not gonna hurt anything at this point. Look down through at the bottom. Got another grease zerk right here. All right. not wanting to take grease very well on that one for some reason. Hold it in a little bit better. Yeah, that Zerk's not wanting to take it at all. Can't get that one to take anything whatsoever. And then on the back side here, you've got one more spot to grease. And it is directly through this way. So it faces the inside because there's no cutout on that Now I may have to use the manual grease gun that's got a little bit shorter of a spout on it for that middle spindle in order to get it greased up, because it wouldn't take it all. I think maybe it was just because my keeper here is in the way. Couldn't get exactly a dead on as far as the Zerk went. So I'll try to get that with my manual one here in a minute. Now, as you're doing all this, now we're going to go ahead and air up the tires and everything. As you're doing all this, we want to definitely check out the belts. Now on this, I know there's not going to be any issues, or at least think there's not going to be any issues, because it's only got 8 hours on it. But you want to check this belt for any kind of splices, not splices, but like markings, any kind of fraying, any kind of cracks or anything in it. And you can also check up top where your dry belt is. So down through here, over the right tire or the left tire, you should be able to see very easily down into where your belts are. And make sure that those belts all look in good shape. Now, you do want to make sure that none of this has grass or dust or debris on it. You'll blow all that off if it does. You don't want any grass anywhere around here on any of the units. So we'll blow this off, even though it really doesn't have anything on it at this point, since it's only, you know, got a few hours on it. But check both sides, blow off everything. Make sure that this thing is not grass packed in all these different areas. Now, not only does that affect cooling, especially up here too, not only will that affect cooling, but it'll also retain moisture, which will make your frame and all the metal rot out earlier. So again, all down through here, you can blow it out real well. Some of them just take, I mean, half an hour sometimes to get all the grass out of them. You can also blow everything out up under here. Make sure that doesn't interfere with your parking brake or anything like that. And again, your fins of your mower for the cooling up top. Blow all down through here. If you're seeing grass anywhere, all along, get as much of the grass out as you can, and that's going to give you better life out of the mower. So at this point, really all we have to do is get the tires aired up. Now we use a digital tire gauge. Makes it nice and simple. Just kind of locks on, and then it's got a digital readout. On these rear tires, you want them to be at about 10. We're only at 6.5 here, so. We're at 10 there. And then the fronts on these are going to be to 14. Now your tires may differ, you can read them. If they're 4-ply, you're going to be normally about double that. Sometimes the 4-plies are 20 or 22 and up to 30 or so up front, maybe even more. But you can read on the tire to see what the actual tire recommends. Yep, so we're about 14 right there. It was leaking a little bit, so I cut it off just a little bit before it came down to 14. Now you'll notice there is a little bit of almost looks like some leakage or something up top here. I don't think it's an active leak, but you'll pay attention to any of those things also. If there's, you know, if there's loose oil or some wet spots from oil that you see, you're going to want to address that and see where those things go to make sure you're not going to have an issue that's going to cost you cause you a problem down the road for sure. I'm not sure why this thing's leaking like it is. Leaking right there where it hooks into the tire. That's not good. Makes it a little bit more difficult to get you right on 10 or right on 14. At this point, got one more tire here. Clean everything up. we're gonna go ahead and, you know, do the invoice and all that, get everything power washed up, and then from there we'll do the double check. We'll, you know, we run it out of here, we power wash it up and everything, and then when after it's power washed, after the invoice is done and everything, we usually come back the next day. We'll check the oil and everything in it, make sure the level's good, double test all the safeties and everything on it, make sure everything's working there, and the thing will be finished up and ready to go back to the customer. So hopefully this gives you everything you need to know about getting your mower serviced, what to watch out for, what to, you know, do to keep your mower running properly when you spend that kind of money on something like this. You know, it's a halfway decent mower for what it is, but if you don't take care of it, you will have issues with it for sure. So thanks for watching, like and subscribe.